The notification appeared at 3:17 a.m., cutting through Jake's darkened bedroom like a digital scream. His iPhone buzzed against the nightstand, casting an eerie blue glow across his face. The message had no sender, just a timestamp. Tomorrow, 2:45 p.m. The attached video made his blood freeze. There he was, sitting in grind coffee with Emma and Marcus, laughing until the ceiling collapsed, concrete and steel crushing everything below. Jake's hands trembled as he watched himself die. Jake shot upright in bed, his heart hammering against his ribs like a caged bird desperate to escape. The Portland rain drummed steadily against his apartment window, creating a rhythmic backdrop to his panic. He grabbed his phone with shaking hands, but the screen showed nothing, no mysterious message, no video of death and destruction. Just his usual Instagram notifications and a text from Emma about their planned meet. What the hell? He whispered into the darkness, his voice barely audible over the rain. The dream, well, whatever it was, felt impossibly real. He could still taste the bitter coffee on his tongue, still hear Emma's laugh just before the rumbling started. The way Marcus had looked up at the ceiling with sudden concern. The split second of recognition in their eyes before everything went black. Jake stumbled to the bathroom, splashing cold water on his face. In the mirror, his usually perfect influencer appearance looked haggard. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his usually styled hair stuck up at odd angles. His reflection seemed foreign, almost ghostly in the harsh LED light. It was just a nightmare, he told himself, but the words felt hollow. The coffee shop they'd planned to visit, Grind Coffee on Alberta Street, was their regular spot. Emma loved their oat milk lattes, and Marcus always ordered the same chocolate croissant. It was routine, comfortable, safe. Or so he'd always thought. By morning, the dream had faded slightly, like watercolors in rain. Jake went through his morning routine mechanically. Skincare, workout selfie, breakfast post. His followers expected consistency, a carefully curated glimpse into his perfect life. But as he prepared his usual motivational caption, his fingers hesitated over the keyboard. The meet was still hours away, but something felt wrong. The Oregon sky hung gray and heavy, pregnant with more rain. The kind of weather that made buildings seem older, more fragile. Construction work echoed from somewhere in the distance. The sound of drilling and hammering that made Jake's stomach clench with unexplained dread. Emma texted, "Still on for 2:45? Marcus is excited to show us his new camera." Jake stared at the message. 2:45 p.m. The exact time from the notification that may or may not have existed. "Maybe we should do somewhere else today?" he typed back. "Why? You love grind. Plus I already ordered ahead." Jake deleted and retyped his response 3 times. How could he explain a dream that felt like prophecy? How could he tell his practical, skeptical best friend that he'd seen their deaths in a notification that had vanished like smoke? "Just feeling spontaneous?" he finally sent. "Since when? You literally have a spreadsheet for spontaneity." Despite everything, Jake almost smiled. Emma knew him too well. His life was schedules and content calendars, carefully planned authenticity. Spontaneity was for his posts, not his actual life. But as he looked out at the gray Portland morning, watching construction workers setting up equipment near the old brick buildings that housed trendy coffee shops and vintage stores, something cold settled in his stomach. The city he'd grown up in suddenly felt dangerous, full of invisible threats. His phone buzzed. For a heart-stopping moment, he expected another mysterious notification. Instead, it was Marcus. "Can't wait to test the new lens. The lighting at Grind is perfect this time of day." Perfect this time of day. 2:45 p.m., when the light would be filtering through those large windows, illuminating their table just before. Jake shook his head violently. It was paranoia, nothing more. But as he got dressed, choosing clothes for what felt like the last time, he couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere, somehow, death was keeping an appointment. By 1:30 p.m., Jake had changed the location 3 times. First, he suggested Pioneer Courthouse Square too crowded, Emma said. Then Laurelhurst Park too cold for sitting outside, Marcus complained. Each time, they defaulted back to grind coffee, as if pulled by invisible strings. The walk to Alberta Street felt different than usual. Portland's afternoon light seemed dimmer, filtered through clouds that hung too low. The familiar sounds of the neighborhood, bicycle bells, distant music, the hiss of espresso machines, took on an ominous quality. Every construction site Jake passed made him flinch. Every scaffolding structure looked precarious. "You're being weird today," Emma observed as they approached Grind Coffee. She wore her usual vintage leather jacket and had her camera bag slung across her shoulder, ready to document Marcus's new equipment. Her dark hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she kept glancing at Jake with concerned eyes. "Just tired," Jake lied, but his Instagram smile felt plastic. Marcus bounced slightly as he walked, excited energy radiating from his lean frame. His new camera, a vintage Leica he'd saved months to buy, hung around his neck like a prized possession. "Wait until you see the clarity on this thing. Film photography is making such a comeback, and I want to be ahead of the curve, for once." Grind Coffee sat nestled between a record store and a small boutique, its large windows offering perfect views of the bustling street. The building was old Portland brick, solid-looking but aged. Jake found himself studying the structure as they approached, noting the scaffolding on the building next door, the construction equipment parked along the curb. The interior buzzed with typical afternoon energy. Freelancers hunched over laptops, students spread textbooks across small tables, and the familiar sounds of steaming milk and grinding beans created a comforting soundtrack. Their usual table by the window sat empty, waiting. "Perfect timing," Emma said, already heading toward their spot. Jake's feet felt leaden as he followed. The table looked exactly as it had in his vision, 3 chairs arranged around a small circular surface, positioned directly under the large overhead beam that supported the second floor. The same beam that, in his nightmare, had come crashing down at exactly 2:45 p.m. "I need to use the bathroom first," Jake said suddenly. "You okay?" Marcus asked, already unpacking his camera equipment. "You look pale." "Just nervous about the new content strategy I'm planning," Jake deflected, but his hands were trembling. In the bathroom, he splashed cold water on his face again and stared at his reflection. The lighting was harsh fluorescent, making his skin look sallow and his eyes appear sunken. He looked like someone who'd seen death coming. His phone showed 2:38 p.m. The bathroom door felt impossibly heavy as he pushed it open. Through the window, he could see the construction workers next door taking their afternoon break, hard hats scattered around their equipment. A crane towered above the adjacent building, its arm extended toward Grind's roof. "There he is," Emma called out as Jake approached their table. She'd already ordered 3 drinks, sat steaming in the late afternoon light that filtered through the windows. "Your usual oat milk latte." Marcus was adjusting his camera settings, the new Leica clicking softly as he tested different apertures. "The light is incredible right now. Mind if I take some candid shots of us talking?" Jake sat heavily in his chair, his back to the window. From this angle, he could see the entire coffee shop, the baristas working behind the counter, other customers lost in their own worlds, the large wooden beam directly overhead that seemed to pulse with threatening energy. 2:42 p.m. "So, what's this new content strategy?" Emma asked, wrapping her hands around her cup for warmth. Jake opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. Instead, he found himself listening intently to the sound around them. The espresso machine hissed. Chairs scraped against the floor. Somewhere, a construction drill started up again, its rhythm hypnotic and menacing. The beam above them groaned softly. Everyone in the coffee shop continued their conversations, oblivious. But Jake heard it, a sound like old wood settling, like weight shifting where it shouldn't. 2:44 p.m. Jake? Emma's voice seemed to come from far away. You're staring at the ceiling. Marcus lowered his camera and followed Jake's gaze upward. Is everything okay up there? The drilling outside grew louder. Through the window, Jake could see the construction crew resume work, their equipment vibrating against the shared wall. The beam above their table groaned again, more distinctly this time. We need to move, Jake said quietly. What? Emma leaned forward. We need to move. Now. The clock on his phone read 2:45 p.m., exactly when Jake grabbed Emma's arm and yanked her out of her chair. The beam crashed down exactly where they'd been sitting. The sound was deafening, splintering wood, shattering ceramic, and the collective gasp of 20 people witnessing what should have been impossible. Dust and debris filled the air, creating a gray haze that turned the familiar coffee shop into something alien and dangerous. Jake stood frozen 3 feet from their table, his hand still gripping Emma's arm, watching their 3 cups disappear under 200 pounds of aged Oregon pine. Coffee spread across the floor like spilled blood, mixing with dust and fragments of what had been their sanctuary. Jesus Christ, Marcus whispered, his new camera hanging forgotten around his neck. How did you? Are you okay? A barista rushed over, her face pale with shock. Is anyone hurt? The other customers had backed away from the wreckage, phones already out and recording. Jake could see himself trending within the hour. Influencers' supernatural instincts save lives at Portland coffee shop collapse. The irony wasn't lost on him. He built his career on documenting his life, and now his life was being documented by strangers. We're fine, Emma said shakily, brushing dust from her jacket. We're fine because Jake pulled us away just in time. She turned to him with wide eyes. How did you know? Jake couldn't answer. His throat felt clogged with dust and disbelief. In his pocket, his phone buzzed with a notification. His blood went cold as he pulled it out, expecting another message from the unknown sender. Instead, it was Instagram. Your story has been viewed 1,247 times, but he hadn't posted a story today. With trembling fingers, he opened the app. There, at the top of his story highlights, was a video he'd never recorded. 10 seconds of footage showing their table empty, then the beam falling in slow motion. The timestamp read 2:45 p.m. posted 1 hour ago. That's impossible, he whispered. What? Emma peered at his screen, then frowned. When did you film that? I didn't. Marcus was taking photos of the wreckage, his filmmaker instincts kicking in despite his obvious shaken state. The construction work must have loosened the support structure. These old buildings aren't meant for that kind of vibration. The manager appeared with a dustpan and broom, apologizing profusely. We'll cover any damages, of course. I can't believe this happened. The building passed inspection just last month. As they gave their statements to the staff and declined medical attention, Jake felt a growing unease that had nothing to do with their narrow escape. The mysterious notification, the perfect timing of his premonition. The Instagram story he'd never posted pieces of a puzzle that defied logic. Outside, the Portland afternoon continued as if nothing had happened. Cars passed by, pedestrians walked their dogs. Life moved forward with indifferent momentum. But Jake felt as if he'd stepped sideways into a parallel reality where the rules of cause and effect no longer applied. I need a drink, Emma announced as they stood on the sidewalk. Something stronger than coffee. The Barrel Room? Marcus suggested, naming their favorite dive bar 6 blocks away. Jake nodded absently, still staring at his phone. The Instagram story had already gained 3,000 views and dozens of comments. Oh my God, how did you know? Fake. This is so staged. Are you psychic? As they walked toward the bar, Jake noticed things he'd never paid attention to before. The way shadows fell across the sidewalk in sharp angles. The loose brick on the building they passed that looked ready to fall. A construction zone ahead with safety cones that seemed to glow with warning in the late afternoon light. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was a direct message from an account with no profile picture. You can run from one death, but destiny has many faces. Jake stopped walking so abruptly that Emma bumped into him. "What now?" she asked. He showed her the message. Her practical nature reasserted itself immediately. It's probably someone who saw the video go viral. You know how these things bring out the weirdos. But her voice carried less conviction than her words. Marcus looked over Jake's shoulder at the phone. "Block them. People will do anything for attention these days." Jake tried to block the account, but when he tapped on the profile, it showed an error. User not found. The message, however, remained in his inbox like a digital scar. The barrel room occupied the basement level of a converted Victorian house, its dim lighting and exposed brick walls usually providing comfort and anonymity. Today, it felt like a cave somewhere to hide from the inexplicable forces that seemed to be reshaping Jake's reality. They found a corner booth and ordered whiskey, lots of it. The alcohol burned Jake's throat, but it couldn't burn away the growing certainty that what had happened at the coffee shop was just the beginning. "Let's talk about what really happened," Emma said after her second shot. "You knew that beam was going to fall. Somehow, you knew." Jake wanted to tell them about the notification, about the video of their deaths, about the impossible Instagram story that had posted itself. But the words wouldn't come. How do you explain that destiny itself seemed to be sending text messages? Instead, he lied, "Lucky guess." The construction noise was getting worse, and old buildings are unpredictable. But even as he said it, he was watching the television above the bar, where the local news was already covering their story. Miraculous escape at popular Portland coffee shop. The reporter stood in front of Grind Coffee, interviewing witnesses who described Jake's supernatural timing. And in the background, barely visible in the corner of the frame, stood a figure that made Jake's blood freeze. Someone in a dark coat, face obscured by shadow, staring directly at the camera. At him, the figure raised a hand, maybe waving, maybe pointing, and Jake's phone buzzed with another notification. The notification was a photo. Jake stared at his phone screen, his whiskey forgotten on the sticky table. The image showed the three of them sitting in the barrel room at that exact moment. Emma mid-sentence, Marcus examining his camera, Jake looking down at his phone with an expression of growing horror. The angle suggested someone had taken it from across the bar. But when Jake looked up, scanning the dimly lit space, he saw only familiar faces and empty corners. The timestamp on the photo read 5 minutes in the future. "Jake, you're scaring me," Emma said, her voice cutting through the bar's ambient noise of clinking glasses and muted conversations. "You look like you've seen a ghost." He wanted to show her the photo, but when he looked back at his phone, the screen displayed only their conversation history. No mysterious images, no impossible timestamps. Just Emma asking about dinner plans from 3 days ago. "The news story," he said weakly, pointing at the television. But the local news had moved on to a story about traffic patterns downtown. No mention of coffee shops or miraculous escapes. Marcus followed his gaze to the TV, then back to Jake with growing concern. "Dude, there's nothing there. Are you sure you didn't hit your head when that beam fell?" The bartender, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and graying hair, approached their table with another round they hadn't ordered. "On the house?" she said. "You all look like you've had quite a day." "We were at Grind Coffee when," Emma began, but the bartender interrupted with a puzzled expression. "Grind Coffee? That place has been closed for renovations for 2 weeks. Some kind of structural issue with the ceiling." The world tilted sideways. Jake gripped the edge of the table as if it might anchor him to reality. "No, we were just there. We had coffee. The beam fell. The bartender's expression shifted from confusion to concern. "Honey, are you feeling all right? Maybe I should call someone?" Emma and Marcus exchanged glances that spoke volumes. Jake saw it the moment when his best friends began to question his sanity rather than reality itself. He couldn't blame them. If their positions were reversed, he'd be thinking the same thing. "I'm fine," he said quickly. "Just tired. Long day of filming." But as the bartender walked away, Jake noticed something that made his skin crawl. Every person in the bar, every single customer and staff member had their phones out, all pointed in his direction. Not obviously, but tilted just enough. The businessman at the counter, the college students playing pool, the couple sharing nachos, all of them documenting him without seeming to. His Instagram app buzzed with notifications. New followers, hundreds of them. Comments on posts he hadn't made. Direct messages from accounts that didn't exist when he tried to click on them. "I need some air," he announced, standing too quickly. Outside, Powell Street stretched in both directions under the gray Portland sky, but something was wrong with the perspective. The buildings seemed taller than they should be, casting shadows that defied the sun's position. Street signs pointed toward neighborhoods that shouldn't exist, and in the distance, construction cranes moved against the skyline like metal vultures. Jake's phone rang. The caller ID showed his own name. With trembling fingers, he answered. "Hello?" "You can't escape what's already written," his own voice said from the speaker. "Every step you take leads back to the same destination. Who is this?" "You know who this is." "You've always known." The line went dead. When Jake tried to check his call log, it showed no recent calls. But the phone screen now displayed a countdown timer he'd never set. 23 hours, 47 minutes, and 32 seconds, and decreasing. 23 hours and 47 minutes until what? Emma and Marcus emerged from the bar, their faces etched with worry. "Jake, we think you should see a doctor," Emma said gently. "The stress of what happened today." "What happened today?" Jake interrupted. "Tell me exactly what you remember about today." Emma frowned. "We met for coffee at that new place on Division. We talked about your content strategy. Then you got weird and insisted we leave early. That's it. And the beam? The collapse? What beam?" Marcus stepped closer, his camera now secured in its bag. "Listen, man, I've been your friend for years. This isn't like you. You're talking about things that didn't happen, seeing things that aren't there. Maybe we should." A car horn blared as a sedan ran a red light, missing a pedestrian by inches. The near miss happened directly in front of them, but Emma and Marcus didn't seem to notice. They continued talking about doctors and rest while Jake watched the pedestrian Aguas, young woman about Emma's age, pick herself up off the ground, shaken but alive. The woman looked at Jake with terrified recognition, mouthing a single word: "Run." Then she melted away into the crowd like she'd never been there at all. Jake's countdown timer ticked down another minute. 23 hours, 46 minutes, and 15 seconds. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The coffee shop was just the beginning. Tonight, Emma's apartment. 11:23 p.m. Fire starts in the kitchen. "You have until then to say goodbye." "Emma," Jake said urgently, "you can't go home tonight." "What? Why not?" "Just trust me. Stay at a hotel. Stay anywhere but your apartment." Emma's expression hardened. "Jake, this is enough. I'm calling your sister. You need help." As she reached for her phone, Jake saw the reflection in the bar's window behind her. Instead of three friends standing on a Portland sidewalk, the reflection showed only empty space where he should be standing. He was disappearing, piece by piece, from the world he knew. And somewhere in the growing darkness, destiny was keeping its appointments whether he showed up or not. The countdown timer continued its relentless march toward zero. Emma's apartment building stood on Hawthorne Boulevard like a brick fortress against the night. but Jake could see death lurking in its shadows. From across the street, hidden behind a food cart that somehow didn't seem to exist for anyone but him, he watched the windows of her third-floor unit. The countdown on his phone read 2 hours 47 minutes and 33 seconds. He'd spent the last 5 hours trying to convince Emma to leave. She blocked his number after the 7th call. Marcus had stopped responding to his texts altogether. To everyone else, Jake Morrison was having a mental breakdown. To Jake, he was the only person who could see the threads of fate tightening around the people he loved. The building's fire escape zigzagged down the east side like a metal spine. Jake studied it through his phone's camera, zooming in on the bolts that seemed looser than they should be, the rust that looked too deliberate, the way the whole structure seemed to sway slightly in the evening breeze. At 10:47 p.m., exactly 36 minutes before the predicted fire, Jake watched Emma's silhouette move across her kitchen window. She was cooking dinner, probably the pasta she made when she was stressed. The same pasta she'd been making the night he first told her about his dreams of becoming an influencer. Back when followers were just people who walked behind you. His phone vibrated with an incoming call from his own number again. "Still trying to play hero?" His voice asked from the speaker. "Let them go," Jake whispered. "Take me instead. That's not how this works. You've already seen how this ends. The coffee shop was never going to kill you. It was a test, to see if you'd run toward death or away from it." Jake closed his eyes, feeling the weight of understanding settle over him like a burial shroud. "I ran toward it. I saved them instead of myself. And now you understand. Every life you save tips the balance. Every death you prevent must be paid for with another. That's not fair." "Fair?" His voice laughed with bitter amusement. "Nothing about death is fair, but everything about it is certain." Through Emma's window, Jake saw orange light flicker across the kitchen wall. It started small, probably just a dish towel too close to the stove. Emma moved with casual unconcern, unaware that her mundane Tuesday evening was about to become her last. The countdown read 0 hours 33 minutes and 12 seconds. Jake ended the call and ran toward the building. The front door required a keycard, but Jake found it propped open by a delivery bag that shouldn't have been there. The hallway smelled like fresh paint and old secrets. Each step up the 3 flights felt like walking underwater, his movements slow and deliberate while time raced ahead without him. He could smell smoke now, faint but growing stronger. Emma's door was painted yellow, a color she'd chosen because it reminded her of sunflowers. Jake pounded on it with both fists, shouting her name until his throat burned. "Emma! Fire!" "Get out now." No response. The smoke smell intensified. Jake threw his shoulder against the door, but it held firm. Through the crack at the bottom, he could see orange light dancing across the floorboards. The countdown on his phone read 0 hours 27 minutes and 41 seconds. "Fire!" he screamed down the hallway. "Everyone get out!" Fire. Doors opened. Neighbors emerged in bathrobes in confusion. Someone called 911. Someone else ran for the fire extinguisher. But Jake could see them all moving, as if through thick honey, while the flames behind Emma's door spread with supernatural speed. A maintenance worker appeared with a key ring, but when he tried each key, none of them worked. "This is the master set," he muttered. "They should all." Jake kicked the door with everything he had. The wood splintered around the lock, and he tumbled into Emma's apartment as heat and smoke rushed out to meet him. The kitchen was an inferno. Orange flames climbed the walls like living things, consuming her carefully curated vintage posters and the plants she'd nursed from seedlings. The smoke was thick and black, turning the familiar space into an alien landscape. "Emma!" He found her collapsed near the back bedroom, unconscious from smoke inhalation, but still breathing. Jake lifted her easily, adrenaline making her weight disappear, and carried her toward the door. The hallway filled with firefighters as Jake emerged. Emma limp in his arms. Paramedics took her immediately, oxygen mask covering her face, but her eyes fluttered open as they reached the ambulance. "Jake?" Her voice was barely a whisper through the mask. "How did you?" "You're safe." The countdown on his phone read 0 hours 0 minutes and 1 second. Then 0 hours 0 minutes and 0 seconds. Nothing happened. Jake looked around wildly, expecting some final twist of fate. Some last cruel joke from whatever force had been manipulating his life. But Emma was breathing. The firefighters had contained the blaze. His friends were alive. His phone buzzed with a new message from his own number. "Well done. Now you understand the price." "What price?" Jake typed back. "Look in the mirror." Jake pulled up his camera app and switched to selfie mode. The screen showed only the ambulance behind him, Emma being loaded onto a gurney. The chaos of a crisis averted. He wasn't there. Not in the camera. Not in the reflection off the ambulance windows. Not in the shadows cast by the streetlights. Jake Morrison had saved his friends by erasing himself from existence. As he watched Emma disappear into the ambulance alive, breathing, with a future full of possibility, Jake felt himself becoming lighter, more transparent. The world was forgetting he'd ever existed, rewriting itself around his absence. But Emma was safe. Marcus was safe. That had to be enough. The countdown timer on his phone started again. 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds. Someone else, somewhere else, was about to receive a notification about their own death. And Jake Morrison, who no longer existed but somehow still cared, began walking toward his next appointment with destiny. 3 months later, Emma Chun sat in a coffee shop on Alberta Street, not Grind, which had been permanently closed due to structural concerns, but a new place that served the same oat milk lattes. She scrolled through Instagram while waiting for Marcus, pausing at a video that had inexplicably appeared in her saved folder. The video showed 10 seconds of an empty coffee shop table, then a wooden beam crashing down in slow motion. The timestamp was from 3 months ago, but Emma had no memory of filming it. The account that posted it showed as user not found, but somehow she'd saved it anyway. "Weird algorithm suggestions," she muttered, but something about the video made her skin crawl with déjà vu. Marcus arrived with his vintage Leica, now his constant companion since the photography exhibition that had launched his career. "Sorry, I'm late. Got caught up editing the Downtown series." "No problem. I was just looking at this strange video on my phone." Marcus glanced at her screen and frowned. "I've seen that before. Can't remember where, but it feels familiar." They settled into their usual routine, Emma editing photos while Marcus planned his next shoot. The conversation flowed naturally around shared memories and future plans, but there were odd gaps in their history that neither could explain. References to inside jokes that led nowhere. Photos on their phones featuring empty spaces where someone else should have been standing. "Do you ever feel like we're forgetting something important?" Emma asked suddenly. Marcus looked up from his camera. "All the time lately. Like there's a word on the tip of my tongue that I can never quite remember." Emma nodded. She'd been experiencing the same phenomenon moments when she'd reach for her phone to text someone whose number wasn't in her contacts, or turn to share a joke with a person who wasn't there. The empty space beside her felt heavy with absence, but absence of what? She couldn't say. Her Instagram notification chimed. A direct message from an account with no profile picture. "Some stories end so others can begin." "That's cryptic," she said, showing Marcus. "Probably spam." I'd been getting weird messages too. But as Emma tried to screenshot the message, it vanished. The conversation showed empty, as if it had never existed. She was becoming accustomed to these digital ghosts, fragments of communication that disappeared as soon as she acknowledged them. Outside, Portland moved through its afternoon rhythms. Construction workers dismantled scaffolding from the building next door, their work finally complete after months of delays. The sound of drilling and hammering had become so constant that its absence felt strange, like hearing silence after a lifetime of noise. Emma's phone buzzed with another notification, this one from her banking app. An automatic payment to a subscription service she didn't recognize. Life insurance policy Jake M. She tried to click on it, but the notification disappeared before she could investigate further. Jake M.? She said aloud. Who's Jake? Marcus asked. Emma paused, the name hanging in the air between them like smoke. It felt significant, weighted with emotion she couldn't identify. I don't know. I thought I knew a Jake once. Jake Peterson from high school? No, not him. Someone else. Someone ... She trailed off, the memories slipping away like water through her fingers. Marcus returned to his camera settings, but Emma noticed him glancing at the empty chair beside their table. They'd asked for a table for two, but somehow they'd been seated at a table for three. The third chair sat pushed back slightly, as if someone had just stepped away for a moment. As the afternoon progressed, Emma found herself taking photos of empty spaces, vacant park benches, solo coffee cups, single shadows on the sidewalk. Her portfolio was developing a theme she couldn't explain. The presence of absence, the weight of what wasn't there. I keep having this dream, Marcus said as they prepared to leave. I'm filming someone, but when I develop the photos, they're just pictures of empty rooms. The weird thing is, in the dream, the empty rooms feel more real than the person I was photographing. Emma gathered her things, checking her phone one last time. Another message from the anonymous account. He's still watching over you. This time, she managed to screenshot it before it vanished. But when she looked at the image later, it showed only a blank conversation thread. As they walked down Alberta Street, Emma felt a familiar sensation, the feeling of being watched by friendly eyes, protected by someone who cared about her well-being. She turned to look behind them, expecting to see a face she recognized. The street was full of people going about their business, but no one was paying attention to them. Yet the feeling persisted, warm and reassuring, like having a guardian angel whose name she'd forgotten. Do you ever feel like someone's looking out for us? She asked Marcus. Every day, he replied. Especially after that fire at your apartment. We're lucky to have escaped that uninjured. Emma nodded, though she couldn't clearly remember the fire either. Just fragments, smoke, sirens, strong arms carrying her to safety, a voice telling her everything would be okay. The details were fuzzy, like trying to remember a dream, but the emotions were vivid and real. Her phone chimed one final time. The message appeared as a push notification from an app she didn't have installed. Until we meet again. When Emma looked at her screen, her phone showed only the home screen. No notifications in sight. But somehow she knew with absolute certainty that somewhere in the space between memory and forgetting, someone who had loved them was still keeping watch. The notification may have been deleted, but the promise remained. In a reality where Jake Morrison had never existed, his friends were safe, successful, and happy. And in the margins of their world, in the digital spaces between what was and what might have been, Jake continued his eternal vigil saving lives, accepting consequences and proving that love transcends existence itself. The countdown had ended, but the story would never truly be over. Want to know what happens when the next person receives their fatal notification? Subscribe and hit the bell icon because destiny never stops sending messages. And someone out there is about to discover that death comes with a time stamp.